It's a great day on the podcast because I've got my best friend here with me. Hey, Nick, thanks for joining us.
Hi, it's such an honor to be here.
In this podcast series, Finish Well, Start Strong. We're talking about end of year rhythms. We're talking about starting the year with intention. And I asked Nick to come on and do this episode with me because last year you and I did something we've never done before. And we took our kids on basically a vision trip together. A end of year, beginning of year goal setting time away. And we've never done that before.
Nope.
You and I tend to have a rhythm where we do this together, but instead we were like, let's bring our kids into this. At the time, they were 13, 12, 11, and 7.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And we took our first trip. And so I want to talk a little bit about that trip, but I also want to talk about really what people will find in page 8 of our free Finish Well, Start Strong PDF that we've created for you at Go and Tell Gals, which really just talks through planning a goal setting session with your family or your team or your community. So we're talking about it as a family, but you and I are also obviously big goal setters, vision casters for our individual teams at Bright City and Go and Tell Gals and our friends as well. We're kind of vision goal people.
That is definitely a true statement. Very accurate. Also, before we jump in, so this is the first time I'm seeing the PDF resource. This is really beautiful.
Oh, it's incredible.
So
it's phenomenal.
So if you're just listening and you're not downloading, then I think you're making a life mistake.
You're only looking at one page. Look at how many pages there are. And it's
so
free.
Pretty.
This is all free.
Oh my gosh.
For anybody
Friends,
who listens to the podcast.
act now.
Yeah.
Get it while it lasts.
End well, start strong. So I want to first just for context, obviously you've been on the podcast before, but it's been a while. But I do want to talk about how I think that I want you to speak in your own words, but you are a vision guy, whereas I am a goals girl.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually kind of struggle with vision. But would you say it's fair to say that you sometimes don't connect with goals as much?
I don't connect with goals, but I definitely connect randomly with steps or a plan of action.
Yeah.
Usually, so probably about 75% of the time, I'll see where we are supposed to go. And I actually, in a weird way, know how to get there. But I think what is helpful with your skill set, at least for me, is I could tell you how to get there. And if you're going and I'm giving you directions somewhere, I could tell you the directions. But what is helpful with your skill set is you capture it into a map that anyone can use.
Yeah.
And so I feel that helps me a ton because I don't necessarily see the map. I just can see how to get there.
Yeah, I'd agree. And also, likewise, but I want to say this. We've been married for 16 and a half years, but this is not something we always did together.
No. And especially so I'll say this, and then I'll add one more thing, especially in the days that were really dark and days that were really hard. It was hard to dream and it was hard to set goals. But I think looking back, I think it could have helped the dark days if we would have dreamed a little bit. It could have helped the dark days if we would have just said, hey, listen, this is not forever. This is not permanent. This is just a season. Yeah. And one day we will dream again. It's kind of like that. I think it's a psalm, or I think it is. It's when the Lord brought back the captive ones of Zion. They were those who dreamed. Yeah. And so it was written out of a place of, hey, you're going to come back to whatever God has for you one day. Right now, it feels like you're in the wilderness, but one day you will enter into the quote unquote promised land. And so you've got to be like the ones who dream. And so anyway, I just felt like it would have helped if we would have dreamed more in those moments.
I agree. And it's funny. Somebody commented the other day on an Instagram post that I had and said, I wish, I must be nice. I wish I could do this. And I had just posted something about dreaming. Actually, it was about you. I posted a picture of you and talked about that beautiful thing that our friends had said about you recently, where they had said, when you dream, we experience everything gets better for us, essentially, because Nick is a pastor and specifically we're in an almost 8-year-old church plant. That is, to some degree, that is very true. When you dream, when you speak vision, everybody else wins, like we all grow. We all get to grow into like what you see. And so I posted that about you, and someone posted in the comments and just said, like, must be nice. I wish I was in a place I could do that. And I had that feeling of like, I wish you knew that you could. Like dreaming and vision casting and even goal setting isn't for when you can make it all happen. It's for like when you need to get with God and say, where are we going? What are you doing here? Where could we go? And so I would just say, likewise, that's something we've wanted our kids to know about their life. Like, life is not happening to you, and your circumstances may be happening to you, but you can still go with God and cultivate,
something out of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so this was our first time kind of bringing our kids into it, whereas we're very used to doing this together. I've gotten better at like going with you as you dream. I feel like you've gotten better at going with me in the actual like goal place.
Yep.
And we obviously do it with our teams, but this was the first time taking our kids.
Yes.
How was it for you? I mean, I know it was an entire year ago at this point, but what was that like for you?
I think it was, so number one, it was fun. Like anytime you invest in your kids, like even though you might not see it now, it's not at a wasted investment. I think we're kind of in the like teenage years where it's like, are you awake? Like,
do you care?
Do you see God or, whatever. And, I have to step back every once in a while and just know like, okay, any investment is a good investment, and, where they are is probably not where I was. And the things that, I'm thinking about right now, it's not that they don't think about them. Sometimes they just don't know how to think about them. So anyway, I would say it was really great. Like I even think back to some of the dreams that they had, and I don't know how many happened for them. Like I'd have to go back and look, but I think just like being able to capture that. And I think the other thing that what you do in that moment is you're essentially declaring that you believe God is mighty in them. Like God is actually working in them. Like God has something for them. And so I think a lot of times where our kids struggle is them not catching a glimpse of destiny. And so they're like going to school every day, and they could just get, bogged down in the everyday grind. And, we as adults do that too. And so I think dreaming helps us see that God has something purposeful for our lives. And so it kind of awakens that. So I did enjoy that part. And then always, anytime we can hang out as a family, it's really great.
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to say this up front. Were our kids like absolutely down and jazzed about a goal setting trip?
Absolutely not.
No, 100% no. But did we make them sit in a room and like write on whiteboards all day about their dreams? No, we didn't. We would like do fun things. Do
you remember where we sat?
We sat in the hotel gym.
Because the hotel was like crazy full that time, and so we literally were in the gym,
and it was also like the thick of COVID, and which it still is, but so we didn't want to be around a ton of people. We didn't want to sit in the lobby. Well, we couldn't sit in the lobby. The hotel was really full, and we didn't want to sit in our hotel room. And so we went and sat in the lobby of the hotel gym and like moved a bunch of chairs together, and we bought the kids all journals. And so we would like go hiking during the day. We'd go like do fun things during the day, and then we'd have like maybe 1 or 2 hours like sprinkled throughout a 2 or 3 day span of time. But like, obviously you could do this at your house. You could do this. I think we will do it at our house this year.
Yeah,
we don't have plans to go away again this year. So we will like carve out some time to do it with our kids. But did they love it? No. Did they? I mean, our 8-year-old at the time, he's 9 now. Was he thriving? Like, not really. Like, but it was very helpful. And I will tell you, I have gone back recently and looked at what they wrote down, and a lot of the things have like come to fruition, and some of them have shifted. Some of them, like I don't think our daughter would mind saying this, like she wrote a lot of goals about singing, but it turns out during this year she like kind of followed a new love of dance and and saw some things come to fruition in that, and so it was stuff like that they were bringing up. But let's actually like talk about the worksheet. Let's talk about just some good steps as you're leading this with your family. These are some things that you and I both really care about culture. And whether, again, you're a mom doing this alone with your kids, or you are doing this with a spouse, or you're doing it with a team, the way you lead into it and the way you carry yourself actually really matters a lot. So the first thing is that we would just encourage you to invite your kids in and show up expectant yourself.
Yes.
You want to speak into that a little bit?
Yeah. And I actually love the word expectant, especially when it it comes to expectations versus expectancy.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when we are trying to follow Jesus and we're trying to do things in life, the most discouraging time can be when we have expectations of how things should turn out rather than expectancy that God's going to show up. And so the number one thing I could say just in parenting in general is it is our duty and our like joy to have expectancy that God is going to show up somehow. But I think sometimes we hinder the process when we have expectations as to how it could go. So, picturing us going back to that hotel, like if I pictured us in a boardroom with whiteboards and we've got Post-it notes all over the wall and we're, going after it and everybody's got 53 things that they're working on and everybody's attentive and they're paying attention and they like come away joyful and all, that wasn't it at all.
Yeah.
But I just had expectancy that we would connect as a family. I had expectancy that God was going to do some things in their heart.
Yeah.
And I had expectancy that he would show up. And so I think that is so key when you're doing anything family related. As parents, we all know that. It's like you show up at the Christmas tree lot to like cut down the perfect Christmas tree and next thing you know, you want to cut everyone with a knife or something. I don't know. Like you want to shake your family because you're like, this is not turning out. So anyway, I just think having expectancy rather than expectations is so crucial for doing something like this.
Yeah, that's good. And I would say whether you're talking about a team or your family or even just like your spouse or two friends, it's such a big deal to sit with someone and care about what they say. That's it. You may or may not know this. Well, Nick, you obviously know this, but friends listening, you guys may or may not know this, but at Go and Tell Gals, one thing we do is license coaches. So we teach other women to be coaches. And one of the most valuable things that we teach them really, truly is just how to listen and mirror back. Because sitting with someone else and saying, hey, what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
Like really, like, and what else? What do you want out of life? What are your dreams here? What are your goals? Like being a human who asks that question and really listens is it. Like that's it. It's game changing. And so inviting our kids or our families into that is huge. I'd want to pause here on the note about inviting them in, that for a long time, people continually ask me, like, how do you balance motherhood and mission? And we have talked about that really at this point, like ad nauseum on this podcast. You can find a million different episodes about that. I hope if you've ever listened to the podcast before, you've heard us say that we really pause around anytime someone asks the word, or ask the phrase, how do you balance? So like, how do you balance motherhood and mission? Well, the point is you don't balance them. You are a mom who's on mission. To ask how you balance them is really to like suppose that they are at war with one another, that like your motherhood is against your mission and your mission is against your motherhood, but they're not. Like they're one and the same and you're one and the same. Now there's really good questions around like strategically, how do you make those fit or how do they work together? But all that being said, well, I want to pause here and say I'm like inviting them in. I want to just give a huge shout out to telling your kids about your God-given dreams and goals. Mm-hmm. And this is something you do really, really, really well, that I feel like you let our kids in on. This is what I feel like God's asking us to do. You've always done it with the church. I think about when we first moved here to Plant Bright City, we would go to like core team meetings of the church plant, which would be us and the kids getting like frozen yogurt. Yeah. And you'd say like, this is our core team meeting. This is what God's asking us to do. So we're going to like, and at this time they are 6, 5, 4, and 0.
Yeah.
And we're having core team meetings about like the church, or, you're really interested right now in real estate and what God might be doing with you through that. And you're talking to our kids about that. Mm-hmm. And so I want to just say similarly, my kids know what's happening in my life of mission. Like I've shared this online. Nothing made me feel like more proud and blessed than when I found out through one of my kids' youth group leaders that they were asking at youth group, they were asking for prayer for me about an upcoming book deal. And like, would you guys all just pray for wisdom for my mom about this book deal? And I was like, oh my gosh, these kids. So tell your kids your dreams and goals.
I think the big thing too is I think a lot of times, especially older generations looking back at younger generations, we sometimes like to point fingers and say, you're settling for less, and how could you be this or not do that, or it's just et cetera. And I think I think the reason people are settling for less, and the reason like younger generations might be settling for less, if that is their struggle, is because we're not inviting them into more.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so crucial, is like, if we're not inviting our kids into more, they are going to like settle for the world, and they are going to settle for like things of this
That's
kingdom
good.
rather than his kingdom. And I think it's our job as parents to like always, it's not to make them do something, but it's always to let them know that there's something more, and
That's
let them
good.
know that we're invited into a kingdom of more, and that there's something greater going on than what the world or culture has to offer. And so I think that's so crucial.
So good. Okay, let's move on to point number 2, and I want you to speak on this. No limiting beliefs allowed.
Yeah, this is really big. I think you have really helped me. I mean, that's why I laughed when you said,
I feel like
speak on
you've really
this.
helped me with this.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, I felt like early on, and we have a training at our church called The Way of the Bright, and it teaches people how to live like Jesus and shine in culture. And one of the things that we cover, especially that we think is a big deal right now, is how we use our words. And I know that you all talk about word use on this podcast a lot, like how we're speaking life to one another. And so I think, the belief is always going to be expressed in our behavior and in our speech.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so important to have faith. And I think when I look back to the mission of Jesus, I think the mission of Jesus is yes, it's an invitation into salvation. Yes, it's an invitation into the kingdom, but the front door is always faith. The front door is always belief.
Yeah.
And so every day is a life journey to figure out how we can believe in Jesus more, and how we can trust Jesus today.
Yeah.
And so with limiting belief, it kind of works against the kingdom and the kingdom principles that God wants to accomplish in our life. I was thinking about, I just read Blind Bartimaeus and his story. And I've always heard people teach on the like, hey, what do you want? And it's just crazy that Jesus knew he's blind and he still wanted Bartimaeus to say, I want to see.
Yeah.
And I've always heard the like, hey, Jesus still wants to hear what you desire, and Jesus still wants to hear what you want. But I think even more than that is, I think Jesus wanted him to express and exercise faith.
Yeah.
And so I think part of that is setting up a family of faith, that you're like, hey, we are not here to limit God, and we're not here to speak death into what life he might want to bring. And I think the biggest thing too is we've had seasons where it's been really hard, and things have been a huge struggle. And I think we always forget that passage in Jesus, when Jesus talks about making the mountain move.
Yeah.
Or at least I always forget, is the faith that's associated with moving a mountain is a faith that he calls a mustard seed faith.
Yeah.
And so it's not that he wants big faith, it's just that he wants faith.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just so crucial to be able to invite our families, but also our friends and our community, especially in a time like now, into like how we're using our words in a way that expresses faith, and not doubt or condemnation or shame or guilt on others, or like having a cynical heart.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like the world would be different if we just like practice this 5% more. I don't even think it needs to be a lot, but I just think if we expressed belief in other people, and not just like, you're the best, you're going to be awesome, but like, hey, like, I think God's mighty in you. I think God has a plan for you. And I'm not just saying that, like, if you're living and breathing and you are following him, you have purpose in his kingdom. And so I think it's just really important to express that, especially in goal setting settings.
Good. Okay, I said you've helped me with the limiting belief, the no limiting belief thing. I want to clarify. I feel like one of the biggest ways you've helped me, and I just want to speak to this. I want to speak for this for anyone who might be married to a dreamer. One of the biggest way you've helped me with this is by saying crazy things that you want to do. And you're really well known in our marriage, at least, for like saying a crazy thing. I want to do this thing. But what I've learned is to not respond with negativity or limiting belief for a few different reasons. Number one, because a lot of things that you've said that are crazy, I've been the first one to say like no to. And I've regretted it. And I want people to hear that. Like I've felt deep regret about being like the first person to speak doubt over that. And I just want to say that for anyone who is like, you and I have a lot of conversations about being the gas or the brakes, like in the marriage. But for anyone who is like sometimes gets annoyed about having to be the brakes, which I would say we take turns being annoyed about that. Or I've probably spent more time in our earlier marriage being annoyed about being the brakes, and now you tend to be more annoyed about being the brakes, about pace, because I have a little bit of a problem with my pace.
That's a different podcast.
Yeah, you want to do big things, and I want to do everything at once.
A lot of things at once, yeah.
Yeah, which is our problem. Not our problem. It's really our blessing, but we're sorting it out. Anyways, all that being said, so now I've learned that when you say something crazy, I say like, okay, that's interesting. Let's figure it out. Like, what's the first step? Yeah. And I want to walk this all the way out for anyone who's saying like, but what if they ruin our life? Like, number one, it's just not that powerful. Like he really can't ruin our life. Yeah. And I trust that he hears from God. And I also trust that God will God will give him insight and wisdom if something's going bad. Now, that being said, does that mean I never speak into something that I think might be a bad idea? No, I don't. But honestly, I mean, I do speak into it if I think it's going to be a bad idea. But I've kind of earned the right to say like, hey, I love you. This doesn't feel like it for me, because I don't say no all the time. So when I do say no, I feel like I've earned the right to be like, I love you. I love this dream of yours. Is there another way we could do this? Could you explain it to me? And that's another thing that you've really helped me with.
Help me explain, or help me understand.
Help me understand. Help me understand why. Help me understand how you think this is going to go. I have different needs for like security and comfort than you do. So like, help me make this doable for me with my needs, with what feels comfortable for me, because we just have really different needs there. Yeah. But that being said, I would say especially if we're talking about vision setting and goal setting with your kids, if they say, we have one kid who has consistently said they want to be on America's Got Talent consistently for years. This kid has applied for America's Got Talent
multiple times.
This child is the kind of child that like the day America's Got Talent season begins, airs
on TV.
They are expecting to get a call.
Yes.
And it has been very important that you and I not be the ones to say, like, this is never going to happen.
Yeah. The place in Scripture I love where I feel like all find our freedom in this is in Acts 5, where that one of the scribes or religious leaders at the time was like, hey, you guys are so worried about all these things. And I think that's the interesting piece of culture is I feel like we all feel like we need to police one another.
Yeah.
And like, oh, I'm the holder of right and wrong. Yeah. And it's like, oh, I don't know if that makes me a little nervous. But in that is, he says, if this is of God, it'll happen.
Yeah.
Like if it's of God, it'll happen. And he was talking about this Jesus movement. And so I think anytime Jesus is moving in your life, it's like, if it's of God, who are we to say it's going to happen or not happen? Like if it's of God, it'll happen. But the key there is in his timing, in his way, in his will.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I just, if you do have maybe some nerves with what comes out of your family goal setting of like, oh, well, listen, my husband or I said this and it made everyone nervous. Like the beautiful thing about that is, number one, if it's kingdom, it's maybe supposed to make you a little nervous. And then number two, like if it's of God, then it'll happen. And so we can all find security in that. If it's like, hey, listen, we're all waiting on this. If it's of God, then that's great. If it is not of God, then great. Like we still exercise faith and we still trusted him in the process.
I'm putting you on the spot, but could we both share, I'm going to have to think about it for a second. Could we both share a goal or a dream or an idea that the other one has said out loud that has been really hard for us to swallow, but that has come to fruition?
I can immediately think of mine.
Well, something that you've said.
That's like mine.
I know, I'm thinking about, can you think of something that I've said that you've been like, I don't want you to do that, or I don't want to do that, or I don't want us to do that?
Something I've said that you've said that makes me nervous.
And I'm saying, can you name one of something that I've said, I want to do this?
Yours are more like daily. Like, for example, today you were talking about getting a present for someone. And I was like, hey, we set the family Christmas budget.
Yeah.
That is quadruple what we were going to set aside for that person.
Yeah.
And
I wanted
so
to buy
like,
my
hey,
mom a trip to Mexico for Christmas.
you wanted to do a lot of things for your mom, which I
really
love.
Sweet about that you were like, when I brought it up the other day, I was like, okay, I have this idea. I want to buy my mom and my stepdad an all expensive paid trip to Mexico. I actually didn't tell you the whole thing. I also wanted to like go ahead and book their plane tickets. But
sounds about right.
Yeah, but you were like, that's a little out of the budget.
But if it's something you want to do, let's talk about it. Whereas mine are typically lifestyle altering.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, let's like a big dream of mine. And this is, I don't know if this is of God, and it's not, our season and our kids and all the things, but I'm like, man, it would be so cool to live outside of the country with our family. Yeah. I think you just vomited in your mouth.
I didn't. I've gotten so much better at that one, haven't I?
But like, hey, if we could just spend a little bit of time outside of the country with our family, living in another city, so that they could have a global perspective
before they graduate high school.
Yeah, of church and world and culture and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh man, that would just be so great. And like, we can, dream about future Bright City expansion, in other parts of the world. And every time I know that one,
I've gotten better.
You've gotten so much better.
Actually,
but it's the security and the what's good for you.
The first time you said that, I was like, never gonna happen. It's not happening.
And now I think I've talked you into like, if we were as a family living in a resort in another country? No. Okay.
Even the other day, I met someone. I told you I met someone who lives in Brazil, and she was like, "Hey, I told her, I said, Nick has a huge heart for Brazil. He loves Brazil."
We've been there.
And I said, and then she said, "Do you think you guys would ever come back?" And I said, honestly, Nick has a dream that we'd live outside the country, like sometime before our kids go to college, all of them for a year. And I was like, maybe Brazil is it. And I said that, like, even when you weren't nearby, like, I didn't say, so let's plan it. And I didn't say that's my dream, because it's not. But I would say, I'm going to ask you about a few ones. Like, for example, if I say, because see, again, I'm a goals girl. So when I said, like, at the beginning of this year, I want to run 500 miles.
Yes. I thought it was 600.
It was 600 at the beginning. It got downgraded to 500.
Oh, that's right. Because, you had, like, injuries and stuff.
I did. Yeah. And I feel fine about it. But, like, did that make you feel any kind of way?
No. So then the other thing is, like, so if you said, I want to run a half marathon one a month, I'm like, okay, well, those are some Saturdays that we got to talk through. Those are some, like, I mean, when we just did one together.
Yeah. Half marathon.
And that was like a 4 a.m. to like 3 p.m. day.
Well, 3 p.m. by the time we like recovered and got
home and stuff. And so it's like, it was, when you start talking about those kind of things, it's like, okay, tell me more, like, help me, let's plan this out. Or maybe it's every other, or, and that's the beautiful thing about bringing your goals and submission to a family atmosphere. Everyone's a team. And so you're trying to figure out, like, how does this work? And then, if you're not married or you don't have kids, it's like, okay, so how does this work in the bigger picture of my life? And then going again back to balance, like, it's not, I don't think sometimes we don't struggle with, the balance is more about choices. And you just have to say, all right, how can I, if these things are important to me, then I've got to make them priorities. And so I think that's just crucial as a family. It's like, okay, what are we going to make a priority? Yeah. And if you don't have a family in your community, like, hey, if I'm going to do this, am I going to be absent from my friends? And I'm going to be absent from my work, or, whatever it is. And that's a quality of life issue. And so I think it's just interesting when you bring it all to the table.
The last thing I want to say about the no limiting beliefs is that you will never regret being the girl who said, I knew you could do it.
Yep.
And you will almost always regret being the girl who said, like, I told you so. I told you couldn't do this. Like, that actually, we think in pride that we want to be the person that says, like, I told you couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
We never want to be that person. It's just not a kingdom-minded way to be.
What happens when you want to be the person that says, I told you so, when you do it right?
Yeah, that's who you are. That's who I have like tears. I have like tears on the back of my eyes, but I'm like, that want to come out, but I'm not going to let them. But I do want to say this because I've never talked about this on the podcast. I've never talked about it online anywhere, but I'll give it to you guys for free. But when Breaking Free came out, you were like the most faith-filled person.
Yes.
About what that book could do.
Yes.
So Nick bought New York Times champagne.
Prosecco
specifically, because I don't specifically like champagne.
Mm-hmm.
But Have we drank it yet?
Not yet.
We haven't. And he won't let us drink it. The book did not hit New York Times.
Not yet.
And he keeps saying not yet, which is, but I keep being like, listen, come on, it's Thanksgiving. Everybody wants Prosecco. And he's like, don't touch that bottle.
Now, a message from our sponsors. Coming in December, Jess's book will be in Target, and you can pick it up in the local Target.
December 26th, actually. Let me check and see when this podcast episode comes out, because
I just ruined it.
You didn't ruin it. Okay. You didn't ruin it. Let me tell you when this podcast episode comes out. It comes out December 23rd. So everybody, if you are listening to this on December 26th, Breaking Free from Body Shame is going to be in Target stores.
Big dream of yours.
Big dream of mine.
Yes.
I've had one other book hit Target, and it hit Target at the very beginning of the pandemic, and I never got to see it. But it's not about seeing the book in Target. It's about the fact that is where women go to like find themselves. It's where they go to like fill up their souls. And I think about every woman who's going to go in Target December 26th through January 5th, thinking that she needs to be better, stronger, faster, thinner, and like looking for the right workout clothes or looking for the right book or looking for the thing that's going to make her better. And I can't imagine getting to hand her like a message that says like, you are already good. You are free in Jesus' name. So go to Target, grab a copy, take a picture, tag me on Instagram.
Now back to our podcast.
Okay, let's keep going. Number 3 on that sheet is going to say, ask why first, not how. I want to just speak about this as a goal setter. The quickest way to get stuck on a goal or get stuck on an idea is to try to figure out how you're going to make it happen. And the fastest way to figure out how you're going to do it is to ask why it matters. And so I just want to encourage you, when a kid, a spouse, a team member says like, this is an idea I have, this is a dream I have, this is a goal I have, a great question you can ask is like, tell me why. And when you ask it, put a smile on your face. Don't say like, tell me why. Say like, tell me more. Tell me why this matters. So specifically with our kids, when we did our goal setting trip with them at the end of 2020, we asked them about every goal. Tell me why this is good for you. And then we asked them, tell us why this is good for someone else. Because we wanted them to understand that using their God-given gifts and moving forward in their dreams was about the kingdom too. It was about them and them experiencing God, but it's also about others. So yeah, what are your thoughts here?
I love this because I think it goes well with number 2 of the limiting belief.
Yeah.
Because an early how sometimes is doubt expressed.
Yeah.
Like an early how is like, well, how do you think you're going to do that? Or how do you think it, like a late how, like after you've expressed motivation, after you express desire, and after you've told someone why this matters to you, a later how is like, okay, I want to help you. But an early how is like, how do you think you're going to do that?
100%.
And so I don't know. And I the why question, I'm always a big like, why, like, tell me why you think this, why this matters to you, all that, because it allows me to see who they are and allows me to see deeper into their soul. And so I think it's such a great question. Why I feel like if we, again, not to, go macro culture, but I think if we spent more time asking people why, rather than like policing them, I feel like we would just be a better world. But the why question just really allows people to open up and tell you their heart, tell you their soul, tell you what God's doing. I think a lot of times people think that if you're following Jesus, you're a robot, but actually you're a person. And he's giving you desire and he's giving you dreams. And this is a part of the fruit of the Spirit at work in you, not Galatians fruit of the Spirit, but like in Acts, they say like, hey, when you're filled with the Spirit, you're going to dream dreams. And so I just love that there's this moment where we get to say, hey, why would you want to do this? Why does this matter to you? And like even tapping into some of my dreams, like the real estate dream that I have is a dream because I think it would be so cool to have like a door for a ministry in multiple countries to be able to give money away from the real estate to fund global missions. And it's not that I want to be like a real estate mogul in Charleston and buy land and own it all. It's because I want to see God's kingdom advance in other countries. And I'm like, man, it would be so cool to have a door per country represent, money to be able to give to them. And so anyway, I think when you ask people why, it's not just that this is what they want to do. You begin to see who they are and why they want that. And I think even with kids, like it helps you shepherd their heart.
Yeah.
Like, hey, why do you want America's Got Talent?
Yeah.
Well, I just want to be seen and I want to be applauded and I want to find worth. And it's like, oh, okay, let's walk that back. Like, not that that's what our kid said, but like, if you're hearing that from your kid, it's an amazing opportunity for you to be able to say, okay, I need to affirm them more. I need to encourage them more. I need to remind them who their identity is in Christ and serving him and not this world. And you don't want the applause of this world. You want the applause of the King.
Yeah.
And so I think it just is such an amazing opportunity to be able to speak to the heart and wrangle the heart back.
So good. Yeah. You ask me why a lot about goals. I mean, even for example, like when I said that I wanted, buy my mom an all expenses paid trip to Mexico, you were like, why? Tell me why.
I understand she's the best mom ever, but
yeah,
why?
like tell me what's behind that.
Yeah.
Like, do you think she wants to plan maybe her own vacation? And I was
Does she want to go to Mexico?
Does she even want to go to Mexico? Have you made this up for her?
Yeah.
But I want to give like a pause here to just say one of your best parenting questions and like spouse questions that you ask. That's kind of a why question.
Hilarious. Yeah.
Do you know what I'm about to say?
All roll your eyes when I say this. Go ahead.
Wait, do you know what I'm going to say?
I think so. Go ahead.
About how was your day?
Yes.
Yeah. So the first thing Nick asks us is like, how was your day?
And they all trip and give me the same answers.
Like, it was good.
It was good.
It was all right. And then the next thing you ask is,
why was it a good day?
Why was it a good day?
Yeah.
What made it a good day?
And then you say that, and then immediately, like our oldest, he'll be like, "Oh wait, it wasn't a good day. Never mind."
Like I say that a lot too. A lot of times I'll be like, "Actually, it wasn't good at all."
It's the, "Hey, how are you doing?" Well, I'm good, tired, but good.
Yeah.
Like everyone gives that answer, and so I feel like when our kids get home from school, they think I want to hear that it was a good day.
Yeah.
Well, that's not what I want to hear. I want to hear how you're doing and why you're doing how you're doing,
good.
and so why is such a great.
All right,
question.
Let's wrap it up. This is also your extreme area of expertise. I feel like you're really good at this.
Right.
I mean, I feel like it's a big thing for our family and our church.
We'll see.
The last thing you need to know is to center on agreement, not accountability. So I'll give the just like intro here that one of the worst things that we can do as women and as like just humans, I think that when someone tells us something they feel called to do, that we then become like a Post-it note, making them feel like a failure when it doesn't happen. And in the past, you have referred to me as a Post-it note. I have an incredible memory.
It's a gift.
Yeah, I have a very, very good memory. I have a really good long-term memory. I have pretty bad short-term memory.
But if it happened in the past, you've remembered it.
Yeah, if it happened 3 years ago, I've got it. Like,
oh man, yeah, more than that.
And I mean, like 3 years ago to like 36 years ago. If it was in the last 3 years, I might not remember.
I remember when I was born. I remember like it was yesterday. This is what marriage is like with Jess Connolly.
But so one of the worst things that can happen is, let's say I was like, "Hey Nick, I want to run 600 miles this year." Turned out to be 500, but
which is still great.
It's still great. But let's say I was like, "Hey, I want to run 600 miles this year," and on the very first Saturday of the year, you were like, "Okay, Jess, accountability time," or "Where are you going running? What's going to happen?"
Those miles aren't going to run themselves.
Yes, that would like actually be the worst. So we try to function in a culture of agreement instead of accountability. And we do this in our church and in our family, and I would say specifically in our marriage. And just the idea is that agreement says, I'm going to make agreements and I'm going to encourage you towards like who you are in Christ and what you've told me you want to do. But I'm not like your accountability coach. I'm not like going to checks and balance you. I'm just going to say like, this is who you are. This is who God made you to be. And I'm going to speak that into you. And I'm going to like remind you that that's who you are.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not like checking up on you. I'm not scoring you.
I think that's really good.
Hi gals, Caroline from Team Go and Tell Gals here. Listen, I love goal setting just as much as the next gal, but sometimes it can be a little overwhelming. Where do you start when we're working to cast a vision? Well, you've come to the right place because you're listening to this series, but I've got even greater news for you. We've created a simple, free goal setting guide to act as an aid as you listen to these episodes and think about the year ahead. It has 3 sections and a bonus resource to help you test out all the tips you're hearing in these episodes and get with God about your goals. Did I mention that it's free? Download at goandtellgals.com or at the link in the show notes. God is mighty in you, and I know He will bring glory through your goals.
Okay, friends, this is not the last time you'll be hearing from Nick Connolly. As always, will you do me a favor? Will you stop right now and will you pray for my husband? Will you thank God for him? And will you ask God for vision? My favorite prayer to pray for Nick is give him favor, give him fervor, and guide his steps. You can join me in praying that for him today. Give him favor, give him fervor, and guide his steps. Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. We are grateful that you were able to listen in. If you loved this episode, would you do us a favor and leave a review so other friends can find this episode? We pray it encouraged you and left you feeling equipped to run on mission right where you're at. We're super grateful for you, and we will see you next week.